Okay, I think we're on.
All right, we're live. Boy, are y'all gonna love today. Barry and I hit a home run, no doubt about it. Hang on.
Home run.
Home run. Our special guest today is George Tobolowsky, artist. We are extremely lucky because he has made a trip to the Biblical Arts Museum and has brought us some treasures to have the opportunity to see. And George, I've told you from the beginning, I appreciate so much your accessibility and your warmth and your willingness to share your talent.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. You know, it's not like I have anything to do today. This is a great day. It's actually a triple day. It's my wife's birthday, my son's birthday, and my sister's birthday. So why would I want to be home?
Happy birthday to all of them.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, you know, one thing we're charged with on the Shabbos show is now how is all of this Jewish? And I don't think that there's a lot that Barry and I could give you for coming on the show. I know you don't want some kind of a reimbursement, but
I always take money.
But we thought some words of Torah might be a good place to start, and that you are very deserving of these words. So studying this and looking things up, and I thought when well, this is mine. I just want to say I'm so excited about that, and I feel very touched and emotional about it. And I was thinking about Exodus, and so I'm going to read just a couple quick verses and see if this doesn't kind of have your name all over it.
Okay.
Exodus chapter 35, verse 30 is where we begin. And Moses said to the Israelites, "See, the Lord has singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, and the tribe of Judah. He has endowed him with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft, and has inspired him to make designs for work in gold, silver, and copper, to cut stones for setting, and to carve wood to work in every kind of designer's craft, and to give directions," which I think is really significant. And then one more thing, and that's Exodus chapter 37, verse 17. He made the lampstand of pure gold. He made the lampstand, its base and its shaft, of hammered work. Its cups, calyxes, and petals were of one piece with it. 6 branches issued from its sides. And I think this is so significant. This is my part of the Shabbos show today. And so I wanted to write out in Hebrew, Bezalel, so I would remember how to say his name correctly and kind of invoke that presence here, because this is what I think of when I think of you, that this is not just a gift of the hands, but the way that these menorahs make us all feel is most definitely divinely inspired, and we welcome you again. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. That kind of reminds me a little bit of my history. I've always been a tool user. I've always, when my mother wanted to get rid of us, she would have my father take us to Sears tool department, and we'd walk around looking at tools. And all through the 60s and 70s, I was able to get a lot of tools and play with tools, and once you know how to use a tool, you can make things with it. Back in the 60s at Hillcrest, I was always chainsawing. So I did art with in wood. I've always said the scariest thing in Texas is a Jew with a chainsaw. And I had chainsaws in the back of my mother's station wagon, and we would, my father had a ranch north of where my studio is located, and we'd go up there and cut trees and build pole barns and stuff like that. Bought my first welding machine when I was in law school, and it was a runabout Miller welding machine. So I've been making art in the 70s, early 70s, business for 30 years, and then back in about 2004, when I turned 55, I kind of crossed the line and went back into making art. So here I am. I have made, I tried to count them last night, probably 50 menorahs of all different sizes and shapes. And I am what is called a found object sculptor.
A found object sculptor.
Yes, better known as a junkyard dog. Basically, I've been going to commercial metals junkyard for over, or scrapyard now it's called recycling center, for over 50 years. And even during that period, I went to gold medals for 10 or so many years, and they were great. All these scrap yards are great to me, and very dangerous places. And I was fortunate enough, I'm still here, and you know, you make friends at the scrap yard.
So you mentioned commercial
Metals.
medals, but so you don't want to bring up Pee Wee at gold medal?
Well, Pee Wee and I are great buddies. Pee Wee was at gold medal. I think he went with Kenny to the new place. Pee Wee, in the video, there's a 10-minute video on me that was made for a couple of museum shows, and it starts off with me going through gold medal. Get the 10-minute video. There's quite a few
Now,
other videos.
do you know what our viewers should look at to get that, or should we Google
It's just George Tobolowsky YouTube, and it's form and substance. And when you look at them, you'll see it. You'll look at one's an hour, one's 10-minute. You want the 10-minute one, and it starts off with me walking through gold medal, and that's Pee Wee driving the forklift, following me around. So, and that 10-minute video, really, my son said, I got 600 hits on this thing in 3 months. He said, that's terrible. So he SEO'd it. He did a search engine optimization on it. I have 140,000 hits. It's gone around the world.
Wow.
I get emails
Incredible.
all over from schools that use it for training how to set up a studio. So,
Okay, hold on. I want to check because I had told our viewers that they could.
is it still live?
This is Good Shabbos. This is, do you know Lolly Weston, Sean?
Yes,
This is
of
Good
course I
Shabbos
do.
from Lolly. Let's see, my friend Polly, Andrea. So, and somebody said, I see Nala Dog back there. I know I had this question from
Can
my
they
friend.
see us with all that verbiage on there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't even see that.
Okay.
The names and stuff.
This is new experience for me.
So
Live.
I know I had this question. Let me see, from my friend Allison Copita, and she had said to ask you. And this is my friend Julie. His work is gorgeous. Okay, Allison wanted to ask you, what is the largest piece that you have ever created?
A little bit of just my background when I was at SMU. I went over to the art school back in '69, and I was fortunate enough to team up with a sculptor, assistant sculpting professor, James Searles. Searles is now one of the leading sculptors in the world, and he is a mentor. And then my other mentor was a lady named Louise Nevelson. Louise Nevelson, if you go to museums and you see big black boxes that are up against the wall of many, many pieces of found objects, those are wooden found objects that she collected in New York City. And Louise Nevelson, I was fortunate enough to meet her and study with her a little bit. And I made a piece at my studio, and I can send you a picture, and it's called The History of Found Objects. And Louise made these pieces, and she had a show in '74 at the Dallas Museum of Art, and I was fortunate enough to help install that show because I had a screw gun. I mean, it's just that simple. Back then, all her pieces screwed together. You had to take them out of boxes, unscrew and screw them together. So Louise, I was able to hang out with her, but she did found objects, and then she painted all of her found objects black or gold or white, maybe some silver. Then later in life, she made them out of fabricated found objects. So I made a piece called The History of Found Objects. We made it. We made it in the studio, and I could barely move it. I moved it out of the way to a corner. And it weighs probably 12,000 pounds. So that's, I'll send
Wow.
a picture.
12,000 pounds.
12,000 pounds.
The base had to be 2,000 pounds.
The base was about 2,000 pounds of plate.
So when you say lost objects or
Found objects.
found objects, so like these gorgeous flowers.
And I was wondering if you could pick it up, Barry, and take it close in.
It's heavy.
This, by the way, weighs 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's, give or take 1,000 pounds.
So George, tell us about this.
Why don't you
These
put
look,
it right here so you don't break your back?
Good idea.
they look like flowers.
These are pride and joy. You know, I go home and I said, Julie, look what I found today, and she'll start crying. These are turbocharger blades. So if you have a big 18-wheeler and you have a big truck, or even your big Mercedes or your other cars, to get enough oxygen into your engine, you have to have these turbochargers. And in that turbochargers are blades that spin around at enormous speed and heat up enormously, and it helps burn the diesel and burn the fuel more efficient. So these blades, and fortunate enough, I've gotten barrel loads of these blades, and they don't look like much like this. It takes, a good hour, 45 minutes just to clean one and cut off parts and sand it and grind it down. So those are turbocharger blades found. Some of these are plumbing supplies right here. This is if you've got a valve switch where you're turning off big water valves or so. This is the ball that's inside of it.
Let's see. I wonder if they can see it. I wonder if I go like that and I come down. And
Right
it'll
here.
Show. Yeah.
So this is the valve switch.
So that's what that inset piece is.
That's where that hook's on for the handle. It's inside the valve, and you turn it on and off. So I pride myself in knowing almost every found object and what it's used for. I've been stumped a couple of times, but when I get museum shows, and I get a lot of museum shows, when I get these shows, the museum directors will always come up to me. They say, look, men are dragged to the museums by their wives. And their wives, they don't really see art they can relate to. Then they all of a sudden see my art made out of tools and out of found objects, and they actually get more into the visit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of one of the themes that I hear over and over about getting shows.
Do people just want to feel and touch your stuff?
Wait, I have to tell him some good Shabboses he's getting.
From
Jackie Schweitzer, love George's work. And then my cousin, your friend Jeff Morris, says, good Shabbos to you three.
Flower guy mine.
And Beatrice Weber is here. And you could see people are coming on, and a lot of them I've missed, but they're wishing you and us good Shabbos, which is lovely.
I've probably had 50 museum shows, and I get to give a little speech at each show, but never a live video. So I really got to watch my words.
What are some of your favorite? What was your first? How did you get into the museums?
Well, fortunately, I had some museum directors that really liked my work, and they would recommend me to other museum directors to get shows. I believe the really first show was in Abilene at the Grace Museum, which is a great museum. Then, that whole kind of period in 07 and 08, because I started back in art in 04. I had my first gallery show in 05 at Gerald Peters here in Dallas, and a couple other shows at Gerald Peters, and then started getting a bunch of museum shows. And they say, why are you going to all these small towns in Texas? I've been to everyone. San Angelo. I go to, and when I said Tyler's not that small, but
Texarkana.
Texarkana, a great place. I've had 3 or 4 museum shows there, and building a lot of pieces in the city. owns a couple of my pieces. The museums in these smaller towns are kind of like the backbone for the artists that are coming online. So you got to support them all and do the shows. And I was coming online. I was fortunate enough to get enough traction to get gigs, as they say.
Well, we're really lucky because you brought these pieces to our backyard today.
Yeah, I'll move it.
But these pieces were actually in a museum, and you went and will you tell us about where these came from today?
People that live in Dallas and know there's a museum across the street from the North Park, which is also a museum. North Park is a museum. It's called the Museum of Biblical Art. And in 2000 and I drove by this place forever. And in about 2013, the director, Scott Peck, does a yearly fundraising drive. They sell art off the wall, little pieces, and ask if I would do a big menorah. And I said, like any good Jewish sculptor, when he asked, do you do menorahs? I said, yes, on Thursdays. So I made my first menorah, and it went there. It didn't sell, but it ended up some collector bought it for the museum. So it's about a 7-foot tall menorah. And like a project like that, and what you would study in school, I went and started buying every book I could find, old books on menorahs, menorah collections. The Jewish Museum in New York has 1,000 menorahs. And there's great books on it. The Israeli Museum has a big menorah collection. So I would, when I'm traveling or going overseas, I'd go look at those menorah collections, and I bought all the books I can get. So you just study up on collections. And there are a lot of found object menorahs, but not heavy metal or tool menorah. I brought a tool menorah, and I made menorahs, and I make Hanukkahs, and I make them out of steel and stainless steel found objects. And
So menorah versus a Hanukkah.
So should we walk over this way so maybe the camera will show this one? Let's see if it will.
Well, this was my first tool menorah, and it's really, I don't know, I had a bunch of tools, and basically it's a big wrench. These are sockets for a socket kit, and these are drill bits. And what really attracted me to these drill bits, because even though this is not a Hanukkah, when you're using these size bits, you have to feed them with oil. And so they're pumping oil through the tips down as they drill. So it kind of was symbolic of the oil used in the old days, say. Actually, I've made quite a few. I've made 50 menorahs, whether they're Hanukkahs. The difference, of course, the Hanukkah menorah, what this is celebrating the 8 days of Hanukkah, and the starter stem or candle would be the 9th. And so, just through research, and we were talking about the Biblical Arts Museum, that place, really, I met, they say, why are you associated with it? I became treasurer of it. I'm still treasurer of the museum, because one day I was giving a tour of 50 nuns and explaining menorahs. I was giving a tour of kids that probably have never seen a Jew before, and I was explaining a little bit about Judaism and the Hanukkah menorahs and the regular menorahs. So it's a chance to talk about Judaism a little bit. So of course this is a Hanukkah menorah, and the Hanukkah's coming up. The largest Hanukkah menorah, if you saw the invite, it's a menorah or Hanukkah basically that was sent out by Debbie, and I sent it to Jerusalem. It went to Jerusalem in 19. It arrived on 1st of October a year ago in Jerusalem for the Jerusalem Biennale of Contemporary Jewish Art. And every 2 years they have a big show of artists from all over the world. And fortunately, I got selected, and it was actually sponsored by the National Center for Jewish Art, which is also in Dallas at the Museum of Biblical Art. So that menorah that was in that picture started off with a great found object, which is the base, and it's the Dome of the Rock. And I remember the Dome of the Rock vividly because in '69 I was in Israel working on a kibbutz right after the 7-Day War, and I was fortunate enough to get inside the Dome of the Rock way back then. So
Were you with anyone? I mean, was it?
I was there with Marshall Funk.
Marshall Funk.
Yeah, really. Marshall and I he said, "You want to go to Israel?" And I said, "Okay, whatever." And so we went off and worked on a kibbutz right near Russian Nikra. It was right on the Lebanese border. And I actually did some candlesticks that are not here, but it's called Shabbat on the border. And because I made some candlesticks, and my wife said they look like guns, and I said, mm. So I called them Shabbat on the border because when we were there, the Israeli soldiers would lean their guns against some barbed wire fence or something as they're protecting the area. And so that's kind of the story on the Biblical Arts Museum.
What about Ted Pillsbury? He's over at the Kimball.
Okay, hold on. I just want to double check.
No, Ted's not at the Kimball anymore. Ted has passed away.
Okay.
But Ted was at the Kimball when he kind of wrote the first essay on me. I think it was at the Kimball, or he might have been at the Meadows Museum.
Wonderful.
That's Pillsbury Peters was the gallery that first showed, and then he left that gallery. But Ted was a great guy. Ted wrote the first essay.
You had so many people supporting you and saying, "Man, you can do this. Just keep it going."
One of my big supporters is Jed Morris from the Nasher. He wrote some early essays and was in films and videos on me. Great guy, and the Nasher has been great. Just been fortunate.
Will you talk a little bit about this Hanukkah? Because I love it, and Barry and I'll step a little bit this way. I notice it's not all attached together.
This, again, it's a found object Hanukkah, and I could tell you what a lot of the parts are, but these are pop-off valves that are used in pressure tubing and stuff. But Julie and I have 4 children, and so what I did was I built a Hanukkah, and then basically, theoretically, I can give one of these units to each one of my kids have Shabbat candles. So that's one unit, so I got Shabbat candles. When I take one away, I have a regular menorah. When I put it back, it's a Hanukkah. So, and this is also memorial, can be a memorial light or candle, and it's also the starter candle on a Hanukkah.
So they're all separate.
They're all separate little units, and I built it, and I didn't build that within mind, but once I started looking at it and studying it, they're not that heavy.
Yeah, but not to you. Okay, so can you all see this? Look at this. So it is how did you describe what this is?
It's a starter candle for the Hanukkah.
But it's made out of...
And it's all, what is it? It's pop-off bow, and then these are just component parts that didn't spec out, these little, and it's all stainless steel. So, and it's over at the Biblical Arts Museum and the National Center for Jewish Art.
Wow.
So it's a nice piece.
So it's a nice thing to do this weekend.
It would be, but they're not open.
Are they not open? Okay.
They're not open but they're open on Wednesdays through Sundays.
Imagine.
All 3 museums.
Okay, taking your time and wearing a mask and
Yeah.
staying a safe distance, we could actually get to take in some art.
Absolutely. Yeah. And out in front of it, I have an enormous menorah, and it's called King Solomon's War Menorah. And it's actually, King Solomon was not a warrior king, but I still named it after him because it was so massive. And in King Solomon's tabernacle, he had 13 different menorahs in there. not Hanukkah's because it's before Hanukkah. So that big King Solomon War menorah, the base is a 500-pound bomb casing. So it's actually a bomb casing that didn't spec out.
I have to ask you this question that I've been asking all of our guests. So this is a hard one. And you're live. Don't forget that part.
Uh-oh.
So we would love it if you would share something about yourself that our guests wouldn't have known, but for seeing you in this casual atmosphere, something a little different that's just not typically on your website, or something you might want to share with us.
I'm really kind of boring and an open book. I think for at least the last 10 years, I get up at 6:30. Well, I'm out of the house at 6:30 because I drive an hour to my studio, and then I'm up there until it's either too cold or I'm worn out. So about at least one, I'll drive back. So during the drive in and out, I get to really think about what I'm going to work on, and then what I'm going to name the piece, and that's where I do a lot of. And then I get back home, and then I'm able to take photos of every piece during that day that I'm working on, and I'm able to see if I got a bad found object in the wrong place. The key to found object art is knowing how to put one found object next to the next and have it relate, and then the most important part is knowing when to stop. A lot of found object artists keep putting stuff on it, and to me that just doesn't work.
But in fact, someone says that about you, that one of your gifts is that you know when to stop. Who says that about you?
I like one of my mother. It was Jed Morris at the Nashville.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he was kind of one of the first guys to point it out to me.
This stuff is so heavy. Like when you're driving to your studio north of here, yes?
It's north of here near Pilot Point, Tioga area.
Okay, but some of these things are heavy. I mean, has anyone ever hurt themselves doing all this stuff?
I got probably 10 years ago sciatica from carrying buckets around at the junkyard, trying to get metal out of, put in the truck. We have been knock on wood, and that's another story about knock on wood.
Yeah.
That I was fortunate enough, no one has really hurt themselves. I'm a three-handed operation. The guy that works with me has a hook on his hand, and hook for a hand. He lost his hand in a farm accident, and every so often he'll weld his hook to a piece, so I have to cut it loose. So it's anybody that wants to come up and do a tour. You put a group together. I get lots of tours. I had a tour bus from the Greek Orthodox Church right across from Solomon.
Tibbo Shalom.
Across from, they had 55 Greek Orthodox. They come up and I give them a good tour, and then we eat at Clark's Barbecue, which is a great barbecue place right in Tioga. So if you want to put a group together, you can either find my number on the internet or work through Debbie.
So at the end of COVID, we're going to get a big bus. It's going to say the Shabbos show. We're coming out to George's, and what did you say? Your treat for barbecue?
No,
or what? No. Bring your money for barbecue.
But actually, I've been doing these tours right now, because everybody will put 3 or 4 people in a car, family members, and a couple of cars will show up. So I don't mind giving a tour of 6 people, 8 people. I've got many pieces of art. I've got 8 museum shows that came back.
All right, here's some of the things. Let's see. Lolly Weston Sean says he's a lawyer. Mark Cutler says he's a Texas map expert.
Yes, that's great. Mark, hello, Mark.
Barbara Presser says hi. She's waving at you.
And Weston, I still have one of Jean's couches. My mother would buy all the furniture from Weston.
Does anyone ever get you confused with another guy that we
Oh.
remember. I don't know if you
Who was
see
that,
the
Stalin?
similarity, but
What are you doing now, Gary Rothschild?
Who was that guy? Stalin?
so how long have you had your mustache?
Since 3rd grade.
So you had to shave it off at least in the army.
Well, I did shave it off in the Army, and I made this one mistake. When my daughter, who hocks me to death about everything, I got 4 kids, so the second daughter went to Hockaday and hocked me about everything. I said, look, when you get married and you give me my first Jewish grandson, I'll shave it off. So if you go to YouTube, you will see a video that her and her husband made of me shaving my mustache off. It's called George Tobolowsky, The Good, the Bad, and the Mustache.
That's pretty funny.
This says, hi, George. Happy Thanksgiving. Hi, Debbie. This is Dahlia and Jonathan Woods. Rive Campo says, his pieces are gorgeous. I'm going to get the challah, and I know you're going to get started on the Torah portion. We could be here all day.
Oh yeah, we could be here
Hanging
all
out
day.
with George.
Cutler was my assistant for years, and he's a pretty good artist, too. Mark Cutler.
I taught him how to play pickleball, which is amazing. He's coming along. I have to
I
work
taught him
with
how to grind metal, and he's now a pretty good sculptor.
Well, you can come find him over here playing pickleball all the time.
That sounds
See,
too much
he's all
exercise.
busy
How's the
playing
hollow
pickleball
look?
now. The hollow looks pretty good.
Whoa, it's grown.
Whoa. Yeah.
Doesn't look cooked.
Not cooked yet. It's just rising still.
Not
It's got
cooked.
a little bit of work to do. Mark Cutler says thanks.
I have a so
I knew when our hollow was ready at our house, the smoke detector would go off.
okay. So this is a part of the time where we have to come up with some kind of bridge between what you're talking about and what you're doing, and the
A
Torah
segue.
portion. A segue. Who would have thought?
How much have we talked? How much
So
time? Oh,
Forever. So this week's Torah portion is Vayetze, and it means Jacob went. So this Torah portion is about Jacob leaving his household after disguising himself as Esau and deceiving his own father. And he's off on a trip to go visit with Rebecca's cousin's, her cousin's house, her uncle's house, and he ends up our brother's house. And so when Jacob is on the way, he gets tired. And he takes a nap, and he uses a little rock as a pillow, and in the middle, you know the story, he wakes up, and it's Jacob's ladder up to the heavens, and then God is right next to him, and God informs Jacob that his descendants will be more than dust on the earth, and also his descendants will be north, south, east, and west, but most importantly, he tells Jacob that wherever he goes, God is going to make certain that he returns to the land that God gave to Abraham and to his father Isaac. So when he wakes up, he puts his little pillar that he uses as a pillow, and the rock as a pillow, makes a pillar out of it, and anoints it with oil. And then afterwards, Jacob then renames this place Bethel, God's house. So that's at the beginning of the Torah portion. And at the very end, guess what? There's a pillar involved again. So this is when he runs away, because after 20 years of working for Laban, and Laban deceiving him, it was just terrible. He instructs his family to head out, going back towards his originally home. And on the way, he separates himself from the rest of his family. Laban gets wind of this. He goes and finds him. But on the way, God tells Laban that you will do no harm or good to Jacob when you find him. So they confront each other, and guess what? They don't argue. They don't deceive each other anymore. Now they're facing each other, and they're honestly confronting each other and talking about all their grievances and all the things like that. They end up coming to an agreement. In the agreement that they say this from here over that way is yours, and from here over that way is mine. Jacob gets a stone, makes a pillar. Other guys go around, other people come around, and they fill it up and make a mound out of this. And they say this is going to be a very important place, and Jacob calls this place God's place when the angels come up to him when they separate the next morning and they go about their way. So it's about building. And it's not just about building things and being spiritual, but it's also about building character. And at the beginning of the story portion, Jacob he just deceived somebody, and then it's 20 years of being deceived. So maybe at the very end of this portion, Jacob, you can see how Jacob's changed, and he says to himself that he realizes God's incredible wisdom, and he has a better understanding about where he is headed. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. You all were going to wave goodbye. We know it was a treat and we went a little bit over. We know you've got to get ready for Shabbat. Thank you so much for joining us. George, we are making a donation in your name. We are so honored and humbled that you came. We're so honored and humbled that you went to the museum and that they, gave you these pieces to bring over here. This was a lot of effort, and it's not a small effort. One of the most important things that I feel today is about the sacredness of what you do.
And if you don't have time to come to the studio, I'll be glad to meet people at the museum because we're open, and I'll give tours there. We all wear masks and do all the distancing. So,
Last thing, if you want to feel a little lighter in your day, drive to the JCC.
oh yeah,
And just see the sustainable, can I call them sustainable flowers?
They're colorful, sustainable flowers out there in front of next to the JCC buildings. Yeah,
They'll make you feel so good.
Those were 4 pieces. There's 2 there. 4 were at North Park. Nancy Nasher had me paint those and put them in North Park for about a year, and now I've sold a few, and they're going around to different shows.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye, everyone. See you next week.